I'm joined now in the studio by Miguel Berner, who is the German ambassador to the United Kingdom. Welcome to you, Ambassador.
Yeah, hello.
Hi, thanks for coming and joining us. Let me just ask you about this, first of all. This piece of news dropped just as we were coming on. You'll be aware of this now. The President of the United States posting on social media, on Truth Social, where he's posted quite a lot here, but among other things, he talks about Volodymyr Zelensky as a modestly successful comedian who has talked the US into spending $350 billion on Ukraine, which is vastly inflated number. The number is nothing like as high as that. He speaks about the president of Ukraine refusing to have elections, being low in the polls. He's not low in the polls, and he's not refusing to have elections. And he then talks about the president wanting to keep the gravy train going. Now, if you were imagine you're advising your chancellor on this and giving your diplomatic opinion, your political assessment of all of this, I wonder what you would say, apart from the fact that it's not exactly diplomatic.
No, absolutely. And, I think, first of all, it's important not to react to every comment Donald Trump makes. But at the same time, we all know that these are Russian speaking points. Putin tried to delegitimize President Zelensky because of the fact that elections in a situation of war could not be held. So I think we need to keep a cool head on all of that, but also make clear that we don't share this assessment.
Indeed, and by all means, let's keep a cool head. There's nothing to be said for failing to keep a cool head. But when we hear, as we are hearing, the lines and the messages of Vladimir Putin coming out of the mouth of the President of the United States, that is still a pretty significant moment, isn't it, when you see the leader of America, as it were, changing sides in that argument?
Yes, we are really at a very critical moment, I think, in the coming days and weeks for the future and the security of Europe. And that's why I share, the Prime Minister, after the meeting in Paris, said this is an existential situation. It's a once-in-a-generation challenge. And I must say, I really agree with this assessment, because the question if Europe will be at the table and how this peace agreement will look like will be fundamental for all of us.
So an existential challenge, not just for Ukraine, but for the defense of Europe.
For the defense of Europe, yes. And we all have said Ukraine has to lead the negotiations with Russia. It's about the Russian aggression against Ukraine. And yes, the US has to play, obviously, a fundamental role, but Europe has to sit at the table, because this is about our security in Europe and the future. And that's why we are having these meetings like in Paris, where we have to come together and also jointly address the US and make our points heard.
Okay, well, clearly you underscore the urgency of this moment and the enormous stakes on the table. Your country has elections this weekend, very, very important elections. I realise you're a diplomat, not a politician, but all of the opinion polls point one way, to a change of chancellor in Germany, with Friedrich Merz taking over from Olaf Scholz. Does it then mean, in fact, whatever happens, does it mean that Germany is going to give a stronger degree of support to Ukraine than we've seen so far?
Our support to Ukraine has been very, very strong. If you look at the military, it has been 8 billion last year. Yes. We are by far, I think, the second largest supporter of Ukraine. Yeah. So despite all the fiscal challenges we are facing in the UK, in Germany, in France, it is pretty clear that we have a broad consensus on continuing the support for Ukraine, no matter what the party. I'm absolutely sure whoever will win these elections on Sunday will continue to support Ukraine.
Yeah, and it's absolutely correct to say that Germany is the second largest single contributor to the Ukrainian war effort, behind only the United States. And it's quite good to hear someone speaking the truth this afternoon. It is also true that Germany has been pretty slow to supply long-range missiles to Ukraine over a period. And the likely winner of the weekend, Friedrich Merz, is campaigning on a promise to give more equipment and more munitions to Ukraine, isn't he?
He said that on last weekend at the Munich Security Conference that he would be willing to do that. But, even if such a decision would be taken, there are months for the implementation. And now I think really, John, I think the focus now has to be, how do we get Europe to the table? How will these negotiations be structured? What will be the topics on the agenda? And how can we Europeans contribute to that? And I say Europeans because I mean the United Kingdom plus the main countries in Europe.
Right, let's look at the idea that was discussed earlier this week in Paris under the chairmanship of President Macron of France for some sort of multinational coalition of the willing to oversee a peace in Ukraine if there is a peace. Now, your leader now, Olaf Scholz, said he was irritated by talk of a multinational peacekeeping force in Ukraine. Ambassador, what did he mean by that?
He meant by that first of all, we need to understand what kind of peace we are going to have. And we were very worried to hear that, and the problem is we hear different American voices, but we were very irritated to hear that fundamental points of a negotiation, like NATO membership, like US security guarantees, US boots on the ground, were taken off the table.
But we took the Chancellor's words when he said he was irritated by talk of a multinational peacekeeping force, that he was irritated by talk of a multinational peacekeeping force, not by the negotiating stance of America.
No, I think what the Chancellor says is, number one, first we have to see what peace we want to secure. And then we can take a decision, okay, is this a peace agreement where we stand firmly behind? And then I'm sure there will be a discussion on how to secure it. Second, it has always been fundamental for us, and the Prime Minister spoke about a US backstop. The Americans need to be part of any security agreement. Without the US, and this is the worry in Germany, imagine you would only have European troops without a US guarantee. What would happen if the Russians attack these groups? Do we have then different zones of security in Europe? We need to have a unified NATO position on that. So all in together, and that would mean the US needs to be on board for any security guarantee.
Right. It seems to be clearly right that whatever happens when it comes to guaranteeing the defence of Europe, and for that matter, overseeing a peace in Ukraine, if there is one, you will need America to be there, backing up whatever happens with its own military power and the support of the United States. As it stands, Ambassador, you can't be sure, can you, that support is going to be there from America?
No, we can't, and that's why, for example, the upcoming visit of the Prime Minister to Washington is very, very important. And I hope after the German elections that we also will continue to engage the American government. I think what we need is, number one, a unified European position. What do we bring to the table? And we need to convince our American partners that Europe has to be there, and then I'm sure we are also willing to make our contributions. We always have said that.
Yeah, I'm really, really interested to hear what you just said, which is to refer to the importance of the British Prime Minister's visit to Washington in coming days, because I'm so used over so many years to seeing leaders of Europe competing to be the preeminent leader of Europe, whether it's Germany, whether it's France, whether it's Germany and France ganging up on Britain, whatever it is. And you're telling me that Keir Starmer's visit to Washington is very important. What do you hope from Keir Starmer, and do you consider there has to be a clear leader for Europe in this situation?
I don't think we need a clear leader. I mean, under Trump 1, it was Angela Merkel who spoke mainly for Europe. But I think if we all, engage the Americans with the same unified message about the necessity of being at the table, being part of the negotiation, then every contact is helpful. And obviously, the British contacts and the Prime Minister going there are of fundamental importance. Macron had reached out. He had invited Trump to Notre Dame. And I think we all have to do this now in the coming days and weeks.
So do you believe it's possible for Keir Starmer to be the bridge that he wants to be between Washington and Europe? Or do you maybe think that the next, or re-elected, the next German Chancellor can be that bridge? Because Donald Trump doesn't seem that wildly keen on Europe a lot of the time, does he?
No, that's why, John, we might need various bridges. We should use all the bridges we have to Washington to engage the Americans. And, you know, this meeting in Riyadh, that was a first encounter. But now when the talks will be structured around the main topics, that is the moment when Europe has to be there.
Ambassador, really, really interesting to hear your thoughts this afternoon. Miguel Berner, German ambassador to Britain. Thank you for coming in.